All right, let's talk more about the impact on social media stocks involved here. Joining us now, Gene Munster of Loop Ventures. Gene, thanks for joining us. And I'm sure we've had a variation of this conversation at least 5 times. This time it feels a little bit different for them to decide, for Twitter to decide to censor effectively a publisher. Is it?
Actually, I don't think it's different. I think this is still deja vu. It's still the details don't largely matter here. What matters is the overarching theme, and that's pretty straightforward, is that legislators on both sides of the aisle want greater restrictions on social media. Today, it happens to be the Republicans speaking out. In the past, there's been Democrats. There's been other issues around Black Lives Matter. All of this ultimately means that greater regulation is coming. I think that's the one takeaway. The movement in the stocks today, the lack of movement in the stocks today, I think is a little bit misdirected. Ultimately, I think that if I am correct, that there is greater regulation, that they're going to have to find ways to ultimately manage their content more aggressively, one of 2 things is going to happen. The costs will go up, and that is negative for the overall business. Or second, I think that you're going to see ultimately that advertisers may not be happy in terms of whatever decisions that the regulators make. And so this is a can of worms that these 2 companies are navigating. And I can understand that the lack of movement in the shares, given this is going to take probably 1-2 years to sort itself out.
Hey, Gene, it's BK. So I'm glad you brought up can of worms, because it strikes me that if Facebook and Twitter or any social media platform now has to have an editorial department before anything gets out on their platform, or maybe not, I don't know, but it just seems that that would be a tremendous cost, and as an investor, it would be almost impossible to the model going out. Is that what you're seeing? Was that what you're thinking? Or is this just going to be isolated accounts here and there and an annoyance that these companies are going to have to deal with?
It's a continuation of what we've seen Facebook spending more money. They'll spend yet even more money. And I think that that's not fully reflected. And ultimately, I think you're going to see much broader views as a publisher. I think that that's where this is going to get into land. It's also important to note, too, when we think about that view as a publisher, even though that those social media companies don't like that distinction, they're asking Washington for direction on this. They don't like going through these fire drills. And so ultimately, I think that there will be this greater cost.
Aside from hate speech, Gene, things that are obviously factually incorrect, why do social media companies have to go down this route? I mean, as an investor, wouldn't it be cleaner to just consider them platforms?
Well, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to be platforms and try to stay out of this. But ultimately, the content that gets us most engaged is the content that's most toxic. And so this is just one of the fundamentals. I'm veering off from Main Street here, Melissa, and getting into my views around social media. But ultimately, I think that these platforms are toxic, and there needs to be greater rails around the way that the content is, and just operating as a platform as it stands today is not advancing how humanity is thinking right now.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question, Gene, because you said you know in your heart of hearts, in your mind, that these platforms are toxic, but are these still good stocks to be invested in?
No, I don't think. I think in the near term, the things will be fine. I think longer term, there'll be more regulation around it. And I think there's just a lot better places to put your money.
All right. Gene, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Gene Munster. Let's broaden this conversation. Favorite stock in the social space, and that can also include, of course, a guy the likes of a Pinterest or a Snap, your favorite platforms, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Pinterest, it's had a tremendous move. We mentioned it yesterday. Rick Heitzman was on, and we talked about the run that stock has had in the earnings. And I think you could stay there. And Snap, you know, I think that stock has obviously really done wonders for itself. And I think a lot of it came while Facebook was facing some of the headwinds that they saw. I think it sort of snuck under the radar screen, and it's been allowed to now sort of flourish. I will say this about Twitter. This is not a political statement. I don't think there was anything nefarious going on there. I just do think it was a really stupid, dumb, use your adjective, business decision that the stock market could either penalize them for or in turn reward them for. So I think you sort of stay with Twitter here. If this is something that outrages you, you don't have to be on Twitter. nor, by the way, do you have to be on Facebook.
Yep. Bonawyn, same question to you. Favorite stock in social space?
Yeah, I still have a hard time betting against Facebook, particularly when you take into consideration that it also has the Instagram brand under it. It's where people go when they need to spend on marketing, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I can't trade stocks now for what might happen 4 or 5 years down the road. Clearly, you'll have an opportunity to reassess at that juncture in time, but right now I'm sticking with what's been winning.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.